Hello and welcome to We Random episode 16, recording live on Twitch, and we're going to send it out through the Podosphere. You know, we just had Thanksgiving, and I gotta say, if there's one thing I'm thankful for, at least I'm not a Cowboys fan. Whoa! More after this.
Almost Qualified Productions. We're 3 beers in. Time for you to catch up.
Welcome to We Random, episode 16. I'm Brian. That's Christopher. Say hello to the people, Christopher.
Hello, people.
That's quite the fitting intro, as while I am not 3 beers in, I definitely brought in 3 different types of beer today for Black Friday. So there was some beer shopping anyway. So we hope you are all happy. We hope you are all safe. We hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. Today, we are here to bring you We Random. As you know, this is our fantastic fun time where we use our Wheel of Doom to go through some selected topics. We have a nice topic list today that includes a lot of random stuff from baseball to COVID to Amazon to sad faces and more. So I say, how about we just jump right in and see what happens, Christopher? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm already spinning the wheel.
Let's do it.
Hopefully got the wheel set up right this time. Section 230. B, what the hell is Section 230?
That's what I said when I saw this article. I was like, what the hell is Section 230? So Section 230, to give you a primer, Section 230 is a part of the Communications Decency Act of 1996. And Section 230 is what the internet calls a valuable tool for protecting the freedom of expression and innovation on the internet. Specifically, Section 230 says that no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. What that means to someone who doesn't write policy in a day-to-day basis is that the host of an internet site is not responsible if you put stupid shit on the internet.
Nobody does that.
You are responsible for what you put on the internet. And obviously there are a few exceptions, but basically Section 230 is why there can be user reviews and classified ads and all of these things, because if somebody posts something that's inappropriate, that user is liable and not the host. So the reason that Section 230 is a hot topic right now is because there was a congressional hearing about it, and a lot of politicians are kind of spouting off about how Section 230 needs to be changed and how a lot of these big tech companies are skewing what people think, and like Section 230 is to blame. But there's also a push to think about how big tech companies in some ways are to blame too, because if Section 230 were to be changed, it would make it more difficult for new entrants to compete with those bigger companies, because the bigger companies are going to have more money for legal and more money for lawsuits and all of these things. So this was something that you had put on the run sheet, Christopher. So I'd be interested to, I tried to give a little bit of recap of it. What are your thoughts about this whole Section 230 thing?
I got a lot of thoughts on this. In fact, I think that this could be like our only topic for like 5 straight shows, and we'd have to bring on like lawyers to really understand all the stuff into this. But I think you kind of summed it up really well. The simple way to look at this is, if I put something really stupid or libelous on Twitter, Twitter isn't to blame. I'm to blame. You can't sue Twitter. You got to sue me if that's the issue, right? That's kind of it in a nutshell. And that's what allows Twitter and Facebook and Google and YouTube and all that's what allowed these companies to become what they are, right? Because without that, you can't have people spouting off all the stupid shit that you see online. And trust me, there's a lot of stupid shit out there. So while I think that there's maybe some room for reform here, the idea that there's this big push to stop this, to delete this altogether, is insane. And really the big push, and the reason why we're talking about that, is because everybody's favorite asshole in chief brought this up this week when what was it, Diaper Don was trending on Twitter, and he got all pissed off, and I'd say his hair caught on fire, but I'm pretty sure that's not real hair anyway. And so he said something about, we need to repeal this. This is stupid. Now I would say that this is, like, I hate to say that 1996 is like 25 years ago, which is freaking insane in my head, but it is. And 25 years in the internet age is a freaking eternity. Think about what the internet looked like in 1996. I was barely even on the internet at that point. So I think that it definitely needs to be looked at. It needs to probably be reformed in some way, shape, or form. But I think we have to be careful what we do, right? I think there's a lot of people that look at this, especially Trump, right? Trump looks at this and says, well, how come Twitter is putting a tag on my post that say this is misleading and not true? Well, it's because it's misleading and not true, let's be honest. But he sees that as censorship, which I get, right? Because in a way it is. They're censoring what he's saying. I think rightfully so, because it's a bunch of bullshit. But there are other people who think that it's not right to do that. I get that. So there's a lot of nuance there, a lot of gray area. It's not black and white. I think that there's going to be a heck of a fight. We need some really, really, really smart people to get into a room and hash this out, which is probably never going to happen. On top of that, there's all sorts of political clout on either side that's going to be impacting that. So that's going to make it even more difficult. And you mentioned, Facebook thinks this is great. Facebook says, let's get rid of it. And you would think, why do they want to do that? Well, because it hinders competition. So if you have a new app or a new social network or something that comes up, and they want to become big. They want to become the next big thing. Maybe they're Parler. Everybody loves Parler. Nobody loves Parler. And they want to get out there and they want to do this. Well, they're going to have to monitor content. They're going to have to watch what people are saying. They're going to have to moderate it. They're going to have to delete stuff. They're going to have to ban users. They're going to have to do all of that. That takes a shit ton of money. On top of that, if something does slip through, now they have the possibility of getting sued. They have to be able to withstand those lawsuits. So Facebook, who's the big kid on the block, they fucking love this, because normally what they do is they just buy up any of the fucking any of the competition that shows up anyway, right? Like Instagram was a competitor in some way. They just fucking bought them up, right? They just buy up everybody, or they just step on them until they disappear and get ground into dirt. So Facebook loves it, but that's also a reason why you need a lot of smart people in that room to have this conversation, because of that nuance.
For sure. And I think it's very interesting with the thought that people want things to be moderated with neutrality, because what does neutrality really mean, right? Because when you're thinking about bots and ads and things like that, what if you have a bot that's posting political ads? Can you stop that? Can you not stop that? And I think one of the interesting things from the article that you had shared that I read was a lot of these companies don't always follow their terms of service anyway. So like in their terms of service, it'll say, we do not allow X, Y, and Z, but then they'll allow it when it's convenient for them, or they'll disallow it when it's convenient for them. So to say, oh, we have to administer this by neutrality, well, like that, like you said, it puts a large onus of responsibility on someone, and especially for smaller companies, that might be too difficult to maintain if you only have so many people and so much time in a day, as to where Facebook could have, all of these moderators and all of these things and all of these automated things to try to get their arms and hands around it.
Well, and the other thing too that we haven't even touched on, which adds to that nuance, is there's evidence that marginalized groups are impacted by that moderation a whole lot more than those who aren't marginalized. So it's going to impact me a whole lot less than it's going to impact a whole lot of other people. And that's a problem, because now we're going to end up in a point where we're silencing those voices that we need to hear more of. That's just, again, more of that nuance. This is a really big issue in my mind. I think this is something that it needs to be looked at, yes, but it needs to be looked at with kid gloves on, because it would be very, very easy to screw this up wholly.
Well, and I think another thing, and this is probably going to take us off track, so I don't want to run too far down this road. I just kind of want to take 3 steps and point.
Run, Forrest, run.
I think some of this is training people to use the internet better. This is kind of like that thing that we talked about last week with fleets, where it's like, well, I can just put this fleeting thing out there and no one will remember it. The
Yeah.
internet remembers everything. So we really need to train people. What are you putting on the internet? And why are you putting this on the internet? And what are you taking from the internet in terms of what you're listening to and what you're watching and what you're believing? Because that's why we have to put these disclaimers on people's posts to begin with, because Aunt Nora on Facebook is like, oh, look, he said
Right.
this. And it's like, that's not accurate. But it's on Facebook, and no one on my Facebook lies to me because these are all my friends. And we know that that's not true.
Yeah, there's and you're never going to be able to educate the masses like that, right? It's never going to happen. So I don't know. It's a very interesting argument. It's a very interesting conversation that's going to be happening, I think. And I think everybody needs to have their voices heard, right? But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what happens with this.
Well, and I think just by it coming up in the political sphere, that almost gives it a political
Oh yeah.
twist too,
Well,
because
yeah, I hate to cut you off, but I kind of started this off talking about Trump, and like that he is the most visible person on social media. Like he's probably the most visible person in the world, period. But especially on social media, on Twitter and that. And as soon as Twitter kind of put their foot down a little bit, I mean they didn't stomp it down, but they just kind of like tiptoe down there, and they started to put those notices on there. You know that he was going absolutely apeshit, and they're making a stand at that point. Like you no matter what you do, if you try to, I don't think censor is the right word, but impact his message in any way, you're making a huge statement. So Twitter really kind of jumped on it and said, look, this is something that we need to do. And I think it's the right thing to do, right? I mean, and obviously somebody who has a different political view than me thinks that it's absolutely the most horrific thing ever. But I think it's horrific that people share fake, false information. I think that, these people who we should be able to trust that are flat out lying to us, I think that's a problem. And to your point, Aunt Nora doesn't know that he's lying to her. She just believes he's the president. Of course he's fucking telling me the truth. He's the leader of our country. He is the person on the top of the, I got to choke down, best country in the world. He's got to be telling us the truth. And people are going to buy that. And entire, the stock market is going to change on every word that he says. Business is going to change. The way that people are treated is going to change. So many things are impacted. And so when he's spouting off about bullshit that isn't true, yes, I think that we need to have some sort of notification say, look, this is not accurate. But then, of course, the other side of it is who's making that decision? What is their angle? Do they have a political influence on it, right? Like I would probably make certain decisions on that account that wouldn't necessarily be right on the line because fuck him anyway. But there's again, whenever politics get involved onto that and people have different opinions, different points of view, it gets kind of ugly. Which again, and we've talked about this with a lot of the Black Lives Matter and the social justice type of stuff, is that's why you need a committee of individuals who can look at things and have conversations and hopefully get things done. I think the problem we're running into, especially today, more than possibly any time in history, is people are so polarized that when you get a group of people together, I don't know how much stuff is actually going to get done. So we'll see, I guess.
Right. I would agree. And I think that's a good way to look at it. Is like we need to come together, and the more that we decide that we want to be apart, the harder that it's going to be to make progress on any of this stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, let's spin the wheel and continue to use our freedom of speech here to talk about some more topics.
Let's do it.
All right, you're laughing. I don't see what's on the wheel yet because I'm on delay, so I'm a little scared.
I'm going to wait because I want you to read this just because of the way that I wrote it on here.
Oh, now I know what it is because I already see it in the little topic window. So
the Packers and MVBS.
All right. So we have a couple of different topics to talk about with your Green Bay Packers. So, obviously, you will be hearing this after the Packers play this weekend, but we're going to talk about what happened with your Green Bay Packers when they played an awful, terrible, no good football game against the Indianapolis Colts.
They fucking
That
suck.
that game was capped by a fumble in overtime by Marquez Valdez-Scantling that had the internet abuzz. MVS wrote on Twitter, quote, "Death threats over a football game? Jesus, you people need help. It's actually sick. I'm good. My team's got my back." Many of his teammates did tweet in support of MVS, and his head coach also provided support for him when a media member asked him point blank, "How can you deal with MVS?" Now, there's a couple things here that I want to talk about with the Packers. Number one, with MVS, I don't feel like you should ever be sending athletes death threats for their performance in sports. Like, that is just not something that we should be doing. We should not be tweeting athletes that kind of crap in general, whether it's over fantasy sports or their real life performance or whatever. We can also acknowledge that some people aren't very good in their sport compared to what we want them to be, but that doesn't mean that we should wish bad things upon them. Like I've said on this podcast many times, I feel like MVS has the hardiest forest wood for hands. Like the guy, if you threw him, a fish out of water, he might not catch it. Like, it's just kind of one of those things. Like he tries very hard. Like he does the absolute best that he can. I've never watched MVS and thought that he was lazy or he wasn't trying hard or whatever. So, I have no real animosity towards the dude, right? But I mean, it's hard with something like that because people get so in their feelings about football. They're like, "Oh my God, this man sucks." And then, like on Thanksgiving, you watch Will Fuller score 33 fantasy points and like 180 yards or whatever he had in that game against the Lions. And then you feel really sad because the Packers are like, "Well, we might bring in Tavon Austin." So,
Dude, let me just say, when I read that, I'm like, you motherfuckers. You could have drafted a fucking wide receiver or two, but... Okay, go on. I'm sorry.
Well, and the funny part is Tavon Austin really would be brought in to replace Tyler Ervin because it sounds like Tyler Ervin's not doing
He's gone, yeah.
But like that's the whole thing about MVS. So I don't feel like he should be getting the death threats. What are your thoughts about the death threats piece before we just talk about the Packers as a whole?
Death threats are stupid as fuck. So, this kind of ties into something I was going to mention on the last topic that eluded me. I was listening to you so intently that I lost it. Anonymity online. This is a big problem. This is why you see this a lot more on Twitter than you do on Facebook. It's because we thought that anonymity, right? When the internet kind of started and Twitter came around, anonymity seemed like a great thing. People can have these conversations. They can share content. They can kind of keep their privacy but still be online. But the problem is it just went way off track, and now people are just ugly, horrible fucking people. And the thing is, that's who these people are, right? So there was a big blow up on Twitter in the gaming sphere this last week, where a couple of women were attacked, like not physically attacked, but verbally attacked. Some big, huge YouTube channel really went after them, and somebody had commented somewhere along the line. I don't remember where it was. I think it was in the Discord for that YouTube channel that was attacking them, and basically the person said, "I'm not racist. This is online. This isn't the real world. I'm not racist in the real world. This is just online stuff." No. A, you're an asshole. 2, you're an asshole. And 3, you're a fucking racist. That's just who you are. And people are more comfortable sharing that information out on the internet because they're anonymous, right? And I think that's a huge problem. I hate that we should get away from that. That's kind of where we are, is we kind of have to dial that back because of all this shit. So then that takes us to the death threats, which are just absolutely insane. What the fuck is wrong with people? Like, I don't like MVS as a player. Like I don't know the guy as a person, but as a player, I'm not excited about it. The guy drops more balls than he catches. He's not great. I want them to replace him with somebody, but I'm not going to send fucking death threats to the guy, right? Like what the hell is wrong with that? And I think that we need to balance that too, because we have the best access to athletes that we've ever had in our lives, right? Like you can communicate directly with these people, with these athletes or actors, whoever it is, these people that you respect, that you idolize, that you root for. Like you can talk with them on Facebook or on Twitter or on Twitch or whatever the case may be. But that comes with responsibility too, right? Like you can't, like doing this is just asinine, and it infuriates me on so many levels. Like we've talked about the different ways that people are assholes online, and this is just one more example of that.
I would agree. And it's just one of those things where people need to take that responsibility to think about, would you do this to this person in person? And if you say no, then why are you doing it online? Right? It goes back to your point of, if you do it, you're an asshole. Whether you do it in person, you're an asshole. You do it online, you're an asshole. If you do it in both places, guess what? You're still an asshole. So
Yeah, I think a part of the problem too is that, and we've had this type of conversation about some of the other social justice issues that we've talked about. People are assholes. That's just, people are bigoted assholes, and that's kind of the world that we live in. Not everybody, mind you, but there's a lot of them out there, and we're seeing people feel more comfortable sharing that. And we've seen it online. We've seen it in the gaming world. It is fucking insane. You see that all over the place. And now people are starting to feel more comfortable taking that, like this asshole in the Discord server, and they're starting to show that in the real world too. So it's always been there. It's always been there behind the scenes. Yeah, in private, when I'm at home, I may be saying certain things or doing certain things, but people didn't have that that way of kind of letting it seep out into the real world, and the internet really opened that up. And then on top of that, these people get into these little holes with other people that think the same way they do, and then it just kind of grows. It's just asinine. I think it's a very scary thing that these people are actually sending these comments. Most of them don't have the balls to do anything about it, but just the fact that they're thinking that and feeling that is asinine. And the more that this is out there and it just keeps building on top of itself, the more that I'm worried that it's going to become an even bigger problem than it already is.
I agree. And do you know what is also a big problem?
What's that?
The Green Bay Packers defense.
Oh, Jesus fuck. Wait. 1 second.
What's that?
Oh, wait, that's the wrong one.
They fucking suck.
That's the one.
I think they both were appropriate for this
They
scenario.
pretty much are, yeah.
But like the whole thing, so the MVS part aside, that game, I called that a ball don't lie game, because there is no way that the Packers should have had the opportunity to win that game based on how they played. Like their defense, like you could have suited up a 75-year-old. Oh wait, what's that? Phillip Rivers is a 75-year-old man, basically. Like you could have suited up a 75-year-old man and he could have run right up the middle on this defense. Like they gave the Colts anything that they wanted.
Yeah.
Phillip Rivers was just messing around and let them get just back in the game enough that they could throw a ball down the seam to our old friend MVS, and 3 defenders converge on him and he actually catches the ball.
Right,
And I'm
right.
like, what? So then, like the fumble, I'm like, yeah, this is a ball don't lie game. Like this is the straight up Rasheed Wallace ball don't lie. Like the ball is just telling us that they didn't deserve to win this game. Like the other thing that like boils me about this team is that they make poor decisions again and again and again, and they're rewarded for those poor decisions again and again and again. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that Jamal Williams is a fine football player. Like he is your league average running back dude that can step in and do a good job. There's no reason that man should be on the field on 4th down
Nope.
when Aaron Jones is on the sideline. Unless Aaron Jones has fallen down, has the coronavirus, and can no longer play, that man needs to be on the field on 4th down.
Well, and they threw it to Jamal Williams too, didn't they?
They did, but
Yeah.
that play, like that wasn't his fault. Like that play was a hot mess to begin with. But the fact that Aaron Jones wasn't even on the field. I'm like, no, you have earned this L. Please take it. But yeah, and then this week it comes out there's a lot of hubbub about Preston Smith and how he's not performing this year, how they had
That's true.
hoped, and they're wanting to give Rashawn Gary more playing time.
Which they
And
should.
it's just like a whole I still don't understand how this defense can be so bad. And then the kicker is that this Sunday they're in prime time, and our favorite sad trombone ski, Mitch Trubisky, is back, baby. And we're gonna get to see this great Packers defense against sad trombone ski, and I'm a little scared, Big C. I can't lie to you.
You know, I've been. How long have I been bitching about this defense? I don't even know. It's I kind of get tired of bitching about it all the goddamn time, but it's this defense is so horrible. And to your point, like, they shouldn't be. They've got some legit players on the defensive side of the ball. They've got possibly the best cornerback in the league. They've got, you know, one of the better rush guys in the league. They, you know, middle of the line, Kenny, what's his name? Kenny something.
Kenny Clark.
Kenny Clark is one of the best interior linemen in the league. Like, he's not Aaron Donald, but he's in the discussion of, you know, top 10 or something. Like, they've got legit players on that defense, and they are absolute fucking garbage. Now, they probably don't have a linebacker, so maybe they could use one or two of those, but they're just trash. You cannot ever count on that defense to stop anybody. You just can't.
Like, there were so many times on Sunday, and it was funny because one of the announcers, I think it was Troy Aikman, he's like, I'd love to be able to tell you what the Packers defense was doing there,
Right.
but I don't know.
Nobody
because
knows.
Like they had a linebacker trying to cover a wide receiver on a slant route, and it's like, that's not gonna work, guys.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck they're doing. And I've said it before, I was super excited when Pettin came in. I thought that he was going to do some exciting things, but it's been fucking trash. Like, the guy's gotta go. And I think what really blows my mind is this: we haven't had a good defense since what, Super Bowl time? Brett Favre Super Bowl time? I don't even know. Like, defense always sucks.
The 45 defense was terrible too, but like, they figured it out.
Yeah, it's just like we've got to do something. And I understand that they, you know, that they've been lucky. And we had this conversation earlier this week, is, you know, they've gotten lucky that they got back-to-back Hall of Fame quarterbacks. But dude, when Aaron Rodgers retires, we are going to be a fucking 3-win football team, guaranteed. Because we're not going to have a quarterback that can save our ass. Our defense is complete trash. We're going to give up 25, 30 points a game, which when Aaron Rodgers is scoring 25, 30, 35 points a game, you can kind of get by. But when you got Jordan fucking Love or whoever the fuck they're going to throw back there, you know, throwing 3 picks and maybe a touchdown a game, you're not winning any games, man. And you know, here's maybe this is a silver lining. This is the glass half full approach. As I was watching my second favorite team, whoever's playing the Cowboys, that's probably not my second favorite team, probably my third favorite team. I was watching oh god, what's his name? Chase Young, is that right? The number 2 pick. This dude is a fucking stud. Like, just like, dude. And I'm watching this guy just fucking wreak havoc on this team, and I'm like, dude, why do we never get a fucking stud like that? And the reason is because we're always drafting like 25th or something, right? But in a couple of years, baby, we're going to be in the top 5 of the draft, and maybe we can get us a defensive stud. That makes me excited, kind of.
It's true. Although, like, the last time they were up at 12, like, I don't even remember who they picked, but I don't feel like that worked out for them.
Probably someone garbage. Yeah, you're right.
So,
yeah.
I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's frustrating, but we're going to be fans, and we're going to watch, and we're going to see what happens, and we're going to hope, and we're going to see, you know, does MVS drop more balls? Does the defense give up more runs? And most importantly, does Mitch Trubisky get benched again? Oh, but here's the fun part.
Yeah.
So, do you want to hear your fun circle of life for the NFL before we move to our next topic?
Sure.
So, as we were just talking about, Mr. Trubisky was initially benched for Nick Foles.
Right.
Nick Foles, when he was in Jacksonville, was benched for Gardner Minshew, who was then benched for Jake Luton, who was benched for Mike Glennon, who initially was the one who got benched for Mitch Trubisky in Chicago.
Oh, let's give it up, everybody, to the Chicago Bears. They fucking suck.
And that's our transition to the next topic.
Spinning the wheel. Sad faces about SMS. What is that all about, B?
Obviously, when you see the little green bubble, you feel sad, right? Okay, so sad faces about SMS. Google has rolled out something they call the RCS-based chat in their messaging app. So this is something that's been a couple of years in the making. It's not an iMessage for Android that many were hoping that it would be, but it has been something that has enhanced the Android market. The Android market has a pretty vast majority of the world's smartphone market. So the Google folks are single-handedly responsible for rolling out this RCS worldwide. And basically, the thing with RCS chat is that it supports many of the same features of iMessage, such as higher quality media, message reactions, typing indicators, and things like that. And also, with the RCS, it is soon to support end-to-end encryption. So that's something that's going to help it to be more safe. Now, people are kind of starting to push back and saying, well, like, why isn't iMessage playing nice with this? So we can finally all be connected, because Apple always talks about how they want things to be safe and privacy centric. But when you're messaging with someone who has an Android phone, it's falling back on the SMS based green bubble. And SMS, as we talked about last week, is one of the least secure formats of telecommunication. So this is just something that's interesting. And as you're a tech person and a privacy person, I wanted to get your input on what this is all about and what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, so I got a lot of thoughts onto this one. So first of all, I think it's great that Google finally, after I don't know how many years, finally got this thing kind of running and out there. I remember that I worked on a project around this probably 2-3 years ago, and even at that point, they were years into this. Like, they've been talking about it forever. And if anybody out there uses an Android phone, I'm sure you've noticed that your messaging app or your communication app through Google and through Android has changed like 7 times in the last few years. And that's because they keep trying stuff. The good thing about Google is they keep trying. So I'm glad that they finally got this. I'm glad that they're going to be going to end-to-end encryption. And I'm glad that they're eventually moving away from SMS. All of that is extremely positive stuff. I can do the Android fanboy thing and say, well, iPhone has had that for 78 years. But, the point is, it's great that they're getting there. Yes, to your point about the green bubble, I mean, everybody hates to see that, right? Because as anyone who's used any kind of, rich text messaging type of application, so whether that's iMessage, Facebook Messenger is kind of similar, Signal is kind of similar, where you can send, images really quickly and fancy little things, or maybe play games across it, whatever the case may be. It's a much, much better experience. On top of that, if it's encrypted, it's a much more private experience, which is good. All of that is positive. iMessage has been doing that for years, but only if you're communicating with somebody who also has an iPhone and has iMessage turned on, or an iOS type device, I should say, or a Mac, an Apple type device. If you don't have that, or if the network quality isn't working quite right, then it sends it as SMS, which is incredibly insecure. Unsecure? Unsecure is probably the word I want. And that's an issue. That's a problem. So, how are these going to work together? I don't know. I suspect Apple is not going to want to integrate with Google's messaging thing. Apple is incredibly privacy focused, and because of that, they want to keep everything in house, right? They don't like to play partners and share too much, because at that point, once something is out of your control, you don't know what's happening to it, right? Somebody else is then owning that. So it'll be interesting to see how that happens. I don't suspect there's going to be a whole lot of playing nicely through there. I don't know how the technology would work if you're doing end-to-end encryption. I don't think the two messaging platforms themselves will be able to coexist. I mean, I don't think I can send an iMessage to somebody on an Android who's using RCS and it's going to stay encrypted that whole way. Maybe they can do that. I think it'd be great if they could. I would be great if my iMessage can connect through to somebody on that Android using that RCS, whatever the app is that they're using, and we can still communicate with some of those more data centric type of things. Like I can send somebody on an iPhone a message and put a little sticker on there or something. It's cool, it's fun, it's allows for a little bit more dynamic conversation versus just text. I don't know what's going to happen. My gut tells me that it's probably going to stay separate, but it'll be interesting to see how that default is going to work, especially if Android decides to go the route of, do they just get rid of SMS altogether? Which I don't know that there's talk of that, but that would be super interesting, because then what happens when iMessage wants to send to somebody that's not on an iPhone? How does that happen? So I say everybody just gets Signal and we're all better off for it.
Yeah, I mean, Signal's interesting. Like for me, like I feel like Signal's an extra step, but I also feel like it's nice now that it does integrate phone number, so people can either text you just at your number or they can send you stuff straight through Signal. So it's interesting.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I think it's great though, especially in the the privacy side of things. I think this is a huge step for Google, and as the I think you mentioned this, or at least our little write-up has it, but a huge percentage, 70-80% of the world uses an Android-based phone. So making that more secure is a huge win all around.
Agreed. We all know how important information security is.
That's right. Get rid of your Amazon Echoes. Anyway, are we ready to spin?
What if that comes up on the wheel?
Oh yeah, we might have that on here. Well, we're gonna find out.
Do you need to throw your challenge flag so we can talk about that?
I don't know, maybe. But first, this is a holdover from last week, and I'm glad that we're going to talk about this one. I don't know how to pronounce her name though. Kim Ng. I don't know how to pronounce her last name.
Yeah, same. So that's what we're going to go with. But we wanted to mention this because we thought that this was interesting. Kim Ng has become the first woman to be nominated as a general manager in Major League Baseball. So based on that, there's kind of a lot of people that are like, this is great, and this is amazing. And one of the things about this is, an article that I read talked about 30 years of patient observation. So one of the things is that Kim Ng moved through the ranks, starting as an intern in the University of Chicago, playing softball, working her way up into MLB offices, including working for the Los Angeles Dodgers and the New York Yankees. So a lot of time and dedication was spent into this. And people are like, while this is great, we still need to look at how half the population in America occupies just slivers of the top professions across our world. So one of the things that I pulled out, because I like data, is the Bureau of Labor Statistics 2019 Outlook shows that 19.3% of software developers are women. They make up just 13.4% of aerospace engineers, 9% of aircraft pilots and flight engineers, 22.4% of clergy, 12.4% of decision makers in US venture capital firms, and on, right? And it's just interesting to see that there are still lots of places where women have not yet been either allowed the opportunity or have not, been advanced to that opportunity. I don't want to necessarily say not sought the opportunity, because I'm sure that there are people who have, but it's interesting to note that while this is definitely an achievement, we need to continue to do better. This is kind of similar to me to that NFL diversity thing last week. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to make that same connection, right? Like we talked last week about how it's important that for to have a more diverse workforce at a higher level of the NFL or really any business, you have to have people who throughout the ranks, right? Like you can't have a company that's 98% white males and then just stick a black man or a black woman at the top of that company and say, look, we're good. Like, right? Like, you can't have the Green Bay Packers, who maybe their entire front office is white guys, but then you hire a black coach. Hey, we're great. Look at that diversity. No, that's not how it works, right? You need a lot more diversity among the ranks. On top of that, I think she is a perfect example of somebody who started basically at the bottom and just worked her ass off to get to the point where she's being recognized and has the opportunity to help lead a team. And I think that's super, super important. I think that that diversity in all walks of life, I think it's important throughout an entire organization, throughout all the different departments and all the different roles in a company are important, and in teams and in sports teams. But I think that it goes way beyond that. And I think it starts as they're kids. I think as people are growing up, right? Because one of the arguments that I've seen, and these are from asshole people online too, is we talk about the STEM areas, right? Which is what? Science, technology, maybe math. I don't even know what the STEMs are. I should know that, but I don't.
Yeah, science, technology, engineering, mathematics.
There we go. So there's a lot of uneducated opinions that, well, girls just don't like that stuff. Well, maybe they don't. But they've also been engineered since they were very, very young that these are the things you like, right? I mean, we could even tie this into gender identity and all sorts of things. But, when you've got your 5-year-old twin boy and girl, right? You're probably giving the boy a football and giving the girl a doll. So does it make sense then? Like why are we shocked that 10 years later, the boy wants to try out for the football team and the girl wants to take home ec or something, right? I'm making a lot of, generalities there, but like you've conditioned people into a certain way of being. And so it makes sense. That's why a lot of this stuff doesn't happen. And I know I'm taking this way out of the sports world, but I think this is a much, much bigger topic than just the sports world. So if you're pumping your son with, hey, go play a bunch of video games, and maybe he wants to get into software engineering, but because the girl was playing house, maybe she wants to go into being a chef or something. So I think that's where a big part of this impact comes from, is early on throughout their entire childhood, boys and girls, or whatever gender, whoever they are, need to be given a wide swath of education and experiences and let them figure out what they want to do. And maybe there's an importance right now specifically to kind of make sure that girls and other, outside of just being female, but other, what am I looking for? Like other demographics, based on your religion, based on your ethnic, background, whatever the case may be. Maybe we need to make sure that they're getting experience and exposure to those areas, making sure that they know what careers are out there as somebody who, maybe something in the computer world or in engineering or in math, or those areas where you don't see a big number of minorities or women, which I guess falls into the minority category. Maybe we try to help push them a little bit in that direction, just to give them an exposure. It doesn't mean you drag them kicking and screaming and say, you're going to be an engineer, but at least open the door and say, hey, I want you to go experience this. I've got a niece who's 15 years old, and I continue to give her exposure to computer programming and coding and those types of things, just to show her, hey, these are things that you could do. This is stuff you might be interested in. Maybe she hates it, maybe she never wants to do it, but I want to make sure that she's at least exposed to it, and I can give her some education, and I can walk her through and teach her some of these things to at least give her that exposure. And then she can make up her mind. At least she can't say 10 years from now, well, I never even knew that I could code stuff. I didn't even know that existed. She's not going to have that as, I don't want to say an excuse, but that's not an experience that she's had. So it at least opens that door to some degree for her. I think that's super, super important. And I have really talked for a long time.
Well, and I kind of wanted to let you go on that because so as you all know, loyal listener, I work in higher education. And one of the things that we see oftentimes is that there is a skew between people's opinions on different subjects, right? So if we look at something like computer programming, and when I talk about computer programming, I'm talking about those mathmagical, oh my.
Mathmagical, I like it.
This isn't even a beer sponsored podcast tonight.
Totally,
that was just a straight up
that's show title. That's show title right there.
Mathmagical.
Yep.
So we're talking about the mathematical loops, logic, arrays, things like that. And one of the things that we often find is that there are times where, females are told and taught, like, math is really hard. Like, it might not be something that you want to do, but like, there are people who have the aptitude to do it. And it's just a matter of helping folks to feel comfortable with it and to want to do it. And if they don't want to do it, cool. But don't kind of discourage them on doing it just because you think it might be too hard for them, right?
Exactly.
But that's what I tell, like, I talk to every prospective student that I talk to is, you need to figure out how you feel about math. I'm not going to tell you how you feel about math. If you tell me that you don't like math, I'm going to say, okay, that's fine. Like, you cannot like it, but if you don't like it, then you also have to think about, is this career area for you?
Right.
Because that's what this career area entails. And some of that is how these things play out with sports. Some people might say, well, I don't really want to deal with X, Y, and Z. Great. You have that autonomy and you have that choice. But to take that choice away from someone, I think, is where we as a society often go wrong. And I think that's where we drill down, like you were saying, to the kids thing. It's like, if a boy wants to play with dolls, you're like, oh, well, that boy can't play with those dolls. Or if a girl wants to play with, the racing cars, you're like, well, do you really want to play with this dollhouse
Right.
instead? Let people do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
If they want to wear a dress, let them wear a dress. If they don't want to wear a dress, don't let them wear a dress. Just don't let them run naked around a neighborhood. That's really the only thing that we would not recommend that you let them do, right?
I don't know, B. The internet told me that you can't be a real man if you wear a dress. That's just what I heard. It's what the internet told me. It must be true.
The internet also told you that there's widespread election fraud and COVID-19 isn't a thing. So what do you want to believe?
That's true. Fuck the internet, man.
Anyway, I think we've spotted on enough about this. So congrats to Kim NG and her new role, and we will spin the wheel. What are your thoughts?
I think that we're not going to spin the wheel because I'm going to throw my challenge flag because we probably only have enough time for one more topic.
Okay.
And I want to make sure that we're talking about the Amazon privacy thing.
Oh, what if COVID was my challenge flag?
Too late. I threw mine first.
All right. Well, let's talk about the Amazon privacy thing and see how much time we've got.
All right. You got to let us in. You got to walk us through it. What's the deal?
All right. So we are going to walk through Amazon's privacy backlash. Amazon, everyone's favorite company, is launching a product or service called Sidewalk in the United States. They call this an opt-out feature the company says will connect Echo and Ring doorbells to any nearby Alexa device, even those owned by your neighbors.
Oh,
Amazon says Sidewalk uses Wi-Fi from neighbors to create a shared network that helps devices work better, but some have raised privacy concerns about this. Sidewalk uses Alexa devices, including Echo and the video doorbell, to create a shared network that helps devices work better, quote unquote, according to Amazon. It allows nearby devices to use a portion of a neighbor's Wi-Fi bandwidth so devices can have more range. It looks like this is a bridge device and shared. I don't like, for me, my first thing was like, why am I giving Wi-Fi to other people? If you don't pay for your own Wi-Fi, that's your problem.
Yeah, no, that's true. So it's just kind of in layman's terms, as I understand it, and I am certainly not an expert in this area, but I am a strong reader of this kind of stuff. Basically, what Amazon wants to do is they want to create their own network using part of the bandwidth of your Wi-Fi. Which it's a small-ish amount, but it's still a significant amount. I mean, if you're, I think they said up to 500 gigabytes, which in the grand scheme of things isn't a huge amount, but if you are somebody on like a limited data plan, that's a huge amount of data. Although 500 gigabytes seems high, so maybe that isn't the right number. But the point is, they want to create their own little Wi-Fi area, and each of your Amazon devices, whether it's an Echo or a Ring doorbell or whatever the case may be, it's going to be on that network. And it's also going to expand that network. So think about, if you visually, I should have created a visual for this. If you visualize like your house, right? And each of your Wi-Fi router, like it has a bubble that's kind of covering your house. And that's where your Wi-Fi range is. Let's say you've got an extender, you've got a mesh network, then each one of those access points has a bubble that kind of comes off of it, right? And that kind of shows the way that your house is laid out, where your Wi-Fi signal is. Well, now you can add a bubble to each one of those Amazon devices, all of your Echoes and your Ring doorbell. And the one thing you'll find is, well, now maybe that bubble is extending outside of your house more. And now imagine your neighbor's house, and they've got those bubbles extending out. Now all of a sudden there's this huge shared network among houses, which from Amazon's perspective is amazing for a number of reasons, right? So first of all, make sure that you always have access. So that could be a good thing for you too, right? If let's say Brian has the doorbell lock, I think Amazon has like a doorbell lock thing. Well, maybe the power's out, he can't get into his house, but it's tied into the neighbor's Wi-Fi now, and for some reason their Wi-Fi is working, so he can get into his house or something like that. You know, it's a crazy example, but something like that might happen, which would be a positive thing. The other thing that's great for Amazon is it gives them a whole lot more data on you, which is what they love. Amazon's a data company just as much as Facebook, just as much as Twitter. You know, they want all that extra data. My concern, and a lot of people's concerns, I think, is now you've got people who you don't know accessing your network, your private network. Now, Amazon says they released a white paper, which I haven't read because 90% of it's probably over my head. They say there's like 3 layers of encryption there and nobody can get through that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, you know what? I'm just not going to let you on my network. Like, it's that simple. Like that's the way that I can make sure that doesn't happen. I don't need your extra Wi-Fi stuff. And so I don't want to be a part of it. So great. I'm not going to sign up. But that's the rub, because this is not an opt-in service. This is an opt-out service. And what that means is Amazon is automatically turning this on for all of their devices. Automatically turned on. So if you're the type of person who doesn't regularly check your email, doesn't understand how to set these things up, doesn't check your settings, which, let's be honest, is a vast majority of people, automatically it's going to be turned on. And in my mind, that is an extreme invasion of their privacy. Certainly an invasion of my privacy. Now, you could say, well, they can just turn it off whenever they want. Sure. Maybe they read the email and they're going to go in and make sure it's turned off. That's possible too. I personally don't trust Amazon not to turn it back on in 3 months when I'm not looking. I just don't trust them to do that. So me personally, every Echo device in my house is gone. I was a little bit on the fence as to wanting them here anyway. And now I've decided they're gone. I've unplugged them. Well, I haven't yet, but before the end of the weekend, they're all going to be unplugged. I'm done. I'll give them away to friends and family if they want it. If they trust it, that's fine. I can't tell anybody else. Okay, I can, and I probably will, but I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't have an Amazon device in your house. But what I will say is go do some of the research, go look at what some people are saying, give it a little bit of time too, because as people start to research this a little bit more, and that may happen after it is implemented, you're going to see a lot more research on what this looks like and how easy it is to get through their encryption, et cetera, et cetera. Do some of your own reading and looking into that. I know that it's not easy. I know that it's not fun. I know that there's a steep learning curve on it. But you're going to find that a lot of very popular media and news sites are probably going to be covering this in much more layman's terms. And we absolutely will too, because it's something I'm very passionate about. So that's my call to arms is just do a little bit of that research and look out for yourself.
Makes sense. So Amazon is no more in your household.
Fucking suck.
Apple is taking over.
I mean, yeah, I trust Apple. I don't trust Amazon. It's really what it comes down to. At least I trust Apple more than I trust Amazon. Let's put it that way.
I mean, it's interesting though. Like, Amazon has always had weird stuff. Like, I have a friend who always told me, if you ever have one of those Amazon devices, I'm just coming over to your house and ordering random stuff because it's not going to know that it's you.
That's true. Yeah, if you have that turned on, it could absolutely happen. And then the other thing worth mentioning is that Amazon has multiple different situations that have come up that have shown issues with privacy. Tons of them have. And to be fair, Apple's had that too, where they've recorded certain things on your devices, like when you're talking to Siri or whatnot, where Siri gets automatically triggered and they're recording stuff. That happens there too. They all do that. They all have that in their terms of service. But Amazon's had a bunch of different things that have come up, and that's something I've talked about this enough, but something worth looking at as well. And all of these companies are going to have them to some degree. The other thing to keep in mind too, just on a grander scale outside of this main point, is anytime you're connecting any sort of device to your home network, be very diligent at looking at what the security looks like. The truth of the matter is the vast majority of them are completely horrible, and they're leaking your data. They're allowing people access into your network. Be very, very, very careful with those.
That's fair. All right, so we're at a crunch point time. We can try to get through this random COVID topic, which I think is going to be kind of interesting. Do you want to try to set like a time limit on it and see if we can get through it?
Well, if we're going to do a ranking thing and we're going to do an extra point, I've got a hard stop at 7, so we can try it. We'd have to, put like 5-10 minutes on it. We might be able to do it.
All right, so basically, the thing with this COVID topic is we need to get our arms around COVID because everybody is still cray-cray for COVID. So, as you know, lots of people were having Thanksgiving this week, and lots of politicians and lots of other people were saying, hey, you really shouldn't go do Thanksgiving. So, for example, the mayor of Denver, Michael
Jesus fucking
Hancock,
Christ.
urged people to stay home for Thanksgiving, then conveniently flew across the country to see his family.
Like within an hour of him sending that message.
Within an hour, he flew to Mississippi with his wife and daughter. When this came out, he tweeted, I made my decision as a husband and father, and for those who are angry and disappointed, I humbly ask you to forgive decisions that are born of my heart and not my head.
No, you're an asshole.
Meanwhile, Pope Francis wrote an op-ed where he praised medical workers and criticized groups protesting the COVID restrictions. And there's other things out here like the Kelly Stafford thing where she said, I don't like living in a place where they tell me what I can and cannot do. And then there was a lady in Kansas who referred to COVID lockdowns as comparable to Nazi Germany, saying that do you really want people telling on their neighbors and friends and family like Nazi Germany? And also saying, seeing a person walking towards me with a mask and sunglasses and a hat used to make me fearful. Now I don't feel anything at all, and that makes it worse. Now, one of the things
what if it's a black man? That's different, right?
Oh God!
I mean, come on, Karen, lay it all out on the line.
So here's my thought about this COVID stuff, and this is why I wanted to bring this up. I feel like this all comes back to personal accountability, right? Because if politicians are going to tell us, hey, like, don't do this, then stop fucking doing it yourselves.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. You are a leader. You have been elected to be a leader. You need to lead by example and not privilege, because you have the privilege to jump on a plane and be safe and take a chartered plane. Mom and pop don't have that same privilege. But if you're telling people don't do this, why are you doing it? That is as fundamental in breaking down people's trust in you as anything, because no one wants to listen to you and do what you tell them to do if you're not willing to do it.
Well, and here's the thing is which side of the aisle does that mayor sit on? He's a Democratic mayor. And just a couple weeks ago, there was this huge dinner that was going to be thrown for new members of, was it the House, I think? And Nancy Pelosi, who obviously one of the biggest Democrats there is, came out and said, well, they're going to be socially distanced. It's going to be okay, before they canceled it. So here's the big problem, right? Like, I am very, very firmly on the left-hand side of the spectrum, but we've got people on the right who are saying the disease either doesn't exist or you're being pussies about it, and we're not going to deal with it. Just go out there and, wear no mask and everything will be fine. And then you got people on the left who are saying, no, we need to wear a mask and you need to not travel. And then what are they doing? They're not wearing a fucking mask and they're traveling, right? So we got one side who doesn't give a shit about anybody, and they're just saying, let people die, who cares? And you got people on the other side who are saying, we don't want people to die, we need to take care of it. But then they're above the law themselves and they can do whatever they want. So I think the moral of the story is all those fuckers are assholes in one degree or another, or the vast majority of them. And, it comes back to your point. It's personal accountability, right? People need to look at this and they need to take care of themselves. And unfortunately, we live in a world where people care more about other things than they do about themselves or their fellow man. I mean, the Pope, who I'm not a religious person whatsoever, but the reason I threw that on the run sheet is I saw, I have this horrible habit, people. Let me tell you about my horrible habit. I actually read the comments on Facebook. It's a bad thing. Don't do it. I'm doing it for you, so you don't have to do it. And there was a story about, you know, the Pope after the Supreme Court decision that they removed what New York was trying to do to limit gatherings at church, because God forbid you have to go to church to pray. Like, I figure you could pray in your own fucking house. What the fuck do I know? You can even dress up in your fancy fucking church clothes and pray at home too. You can do that too. You can probably buy some fucking crusty bread and some cheap ass wine and even do the bread wine thing. You can do that at home too. Like, all this shit can be done at home. But now I'm on my religion train, and that's a different story. So the Pope came out and basically said, you know, we need to take this seriously. The thing is these decisions, they hurt primarily the most vulnerable people in our society. And those are the people we need to watch out for the most. The people who are already sick, or the people who, you know, don't have the means to take care of themselves if something bad happens. These are the people we need to take care of. And instead, what we've got are a bunch of people who are saying, fuck them. Who cares? I don't give a shit what they say. There is somebody on this fucking thread in the comments. Somebody actually called out and said, look, this is, so the initial comment was something about, you know, this is right. We need to be able to go to our church. Fuck you, dude. But then somebody commented, is like, dude, this is the Pope. This is like the head of your whole group, right? Like, he's the one who's saying, you know, as Christians, we need to take care of the people that we can take care of. That's what we're all about. And somebody commented and said, he's not the Pope, he's not a Christian, he's the Antichrist. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, people? Like, blowing my fucking mind at the way that people just twist things to fit their stupid ass crazy fucking Karen narrative. My eyes popped out of my head and started bleeding. I don't know what to do with these people anymore, man.
I think I know what you should do. I think you should play the Zeke Elliott. Zeke Elliott feed you of the week. Because that's what this has to be. Because you eating this is like Zeke Elliott just filling his belly with that bullshit that makes him fumble on fourth down.
I just got to point out that there's a streamer that I follow on Twitch or on Twitter, and I watch him every now and then. But his Twitter handle is like Ezekiel _ III or something. Yeah. So like every week, bunch of Cowboy fans who are pissed because the Cowboys suck, so they're pissed every week. They start posting all this bullshit about Zeke Elliott is horrible and Zeke fumbles and blah, 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 blah. But they tag him instead of the real Zeke Elliott. And he responds to all of these like a smartass. It's fucking brilliant. So you should look it up. It's great.
It is pretty brilliant. My favorite thing of the week that I saw was there was a GIF of Zeke Elliott's head transposed onto Kevin from The Office, where like Kevin was walking in with the chili and he like spilled it all over the floor.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love it.
Anyway, so that's our COVID cray for the week. So now we've got two options. We can roll into our extra points and we can save the random rankings for another day, or we can pound through this random ranking. What are your thoughts here?
I'm thinking based on time. Let's just run straight to the extra point.
All right, so random rankings is going to take the week off. It's got to buy it. It contracted COVID-19 along with Lamar Jackson because we forgot to talk about that fuck knuckle for the Ravens who had symptoms and went into the office anyway, and that's how they've gotten themselves into this position.
Fucking people, man.
But anyway, so I'm going to let you go first with your extra point this week, because every time that I do an extra point, you're like, I should have gone first. This week you get to go first.
I don't like going first, but so I had an idea as to what I wanted to talk about. And then I went back and forth as to whether it's too early to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So last week, our extra point was about trying to help other people, right? And trying to, people who are maybe not in a position that you are or that we are, and how can you help out? And I mentioned then that I had an idea that I wanted to kind of spur on, because there wasn't enough time to do something for Thanksgiving. So for the next month or so, I'm going to mention this here and there, on the podcast, definitely on stream, because I want to. I'm in a position where I can kind of help some other people, and I think there are some people out there who are also in that position, and I think it's important that we do that if we're able to. And I want to share a story that leads into this. So, as I mentioned last week, I grew up poor. I think it's a word that we would use. In fact, my dad used to say we po. We can't even afford the OR on the end. Like we just po. Um, and that impacted all sorts of areas of life. We don't need to get into all that. Last week I talked a little bit about how that impacted Thanksgiving and how we got food delivered to us at one point or a couple times, and we were all excited because we knew that we'd actually have a Thanksgiving meal, which was nice. But this is a story that this is a Christmas story, and it's a story that I try to reminisce on as much as I can, and it comes up every time this time of year. And because today is Black Friday, where people are buying all kinds of crazy stuff that they don't need, they're going to resell it, they're going to give it off to people, whatever the case may be. I thought this was a good time to kind of ground myself and maybe ground some other people too. So I came home from school. It was I was in my teenage years, so I was probably 13, 14, 15-ish, that range. Probably in the 15 range. And I came home and I'm going to date myself here. I noticed on the kitchen table was a cassette tape. Now, for those kids out there who don't know, a cassette tape is what we used to listen to music before you stream music, which were CDs. And before the CDs, they were cassette tapes. So there was a cassette tape. It was a Garth Brooks cassette tape. Rope in the Wind was the exact album. And I asked my mom, who was home at the time, I said, hey, what is this? And she told me that some people had bought gifts for us because we were poor and they wanted to make sure we could have a good Christmas. And she said, somebody bought that for you. She says, but I know you don't listen to that kind of music, so I'm just going to keep that and I'll buy you something else. And I don't know why at that age, right, that this even dawned on me to say, but I said, no, I'm gonna keep this and I'm gonna listen to this. And I shit you not, I became a big country music fan, a huge Garth Brooks fan, because of that one act. And I think back on that, and I'm getting a little bit emotional, but it touched me so much that some person that I never knew, probably never will know, cared enough about some strange kid to buy him a gift. And Christmas and the holidays, I think, are, whether you're religious or not, it's a very special time for people, but it's also a very, very difficult time for people, whether that's because they've had loss around that time of year, or maybe they just can't afford to give a great big Christmas to their families or their friends or the people that they love. And I've been blessed over, the last number of years that I'm in a position where I can help some people. I sure as hell can't give a bunch, but I can give something, and I want to do that. So there's a couple different local groups that I'm kind of looking at. I'm still deciding exactly which one I want to support and how to support that. But in the coming days and weeks and month, I'll be sharing that with you either through the Twitch channel, social media, and then on this podcast, I'll bring it up as well. And I'd like to ask anybody who's listening or watching, if you are able, and if your heart's there, which I certainly hope it is, that you assist as well. And if you don't want to give, or if you can't give, but if you don't want to give to the certain group that I come up with, find your own. One of those things where you can just buy a gift for somebody or buy a meal for somebody or whatever the case may be. I think this is a time of year when we really need to help people, and a lot of people are struggling. A lot of people are struggling hard. So I think that's something all of us can do. And that's my ask of you.
That's great. I mean, I definitely want to know more about that. I'm definitely willing to jump in and do anything that I can do. And I think this kind of ties into my extra point. I didn't know that it was going to tie into my extra point, but I think it's very interesting, right? Because one of the things that I'm going to talk about today is finding your A plus skill. This is something that I stole directly from Trent Shelton. This morning I got up and it was beautiful outside and I'm like, I'm going to go for a walk. So I put on my audiobook from Trent Shelton and I'm listening and I'm thinking, and he's talking about, everybody's got a skill and you have to figure out what it is. And sometimes your skill is something that you can monetize, sometimes it's not. but find your skill and then be able to give that to the world. Because if you keep it to yourself, you're not doing anyone a service. So whatever your skill is, give it to the world. And I think that that's part of this, right? Because there are some people who might not be able to give financially, but you might be the type of person that can help someone to build something that they need. You might be the type of person who, by just listening to someone, can help them feel valued and part of something. You might be the type of person who can do something for others that they're not able to do for themselves, shovel their walkway or whatever. So there's lots of different ways to give back to the world. And if you're able to find what your skill is and you're able to give back to the world, I think that's what the most important thing is, because your legacy is what you leave right now. And it's not about your legacy. You don't have to make it about you. But when you don't make it about you, that's when hopefully you will achieve the most, because you're not thinking about how this is going to benefit me. You're thinking about how this is going to benefit the greater good.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a ton of sense, and I think it's really about looking beyond yourself, right? That's what it all comes down to, is looking outside of that box, and I think that's something we're all capable of doing. I think it's all we need, something we all need to do a little bit more of, honestly.
I'd agree. And it was interesting. One of the other things that Trent was talking about is the difference between happiness and, you know, desire, or the happiness and want. Because people always will say, happiness, I want to be happy. Well, sometimes what makes you happy isn't what you need. Sometimes what makes you happy isn't what the world needs. You know, the connection between happiness and want and desire sometimes is not great, because people will say, well, I want that PS5. I need that PS5. That PS5 is going to make me happy. But what you could do with that money that you're spending on that PS5 could make all the world of difference for someone else. And knowing that you've made all the world of difference for someone else is going to last longer than any piece of entertainment.
Yeah, I agree completely.
So with that, we will wrap this up here. We're going to put a nice little bow on it. So this is We Random, episode 16. We are going to plug our socials. So as you know, on Fridays at 5:30 Central Time, you can find us on twitch.tv/Skonzi, SKONZII, if you would like to see all of our fun stuff. And if you are watching on Twitch, you can see all of our fun little links. If you want to find us on Twitter, you can find Almost Qualified Productions at AQ_PROD. You can find me, I am Brian, at Landmark MKE on Twitter. You can find Christopher at Skonzi on Twitter. And you can also find us on Anchor, on your favorite podcast app. And because the internet remembers everything, if you just Google us, I'm sure you'll find us there too.
I'm sure you will.
And now with Sidewalk, you can even log into our Wi-Fi network if you'd like.
Oh, snap.
Anyway, do you have any other parting words for the people tonight, Christopher?
I do not.
All right. Well, until next time, people, thank you for listening to We Random. Be safe. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you next week.
See you, everybody. Bye-bye.